Welcome to What If Universe.
What if a nuclear bomb detonated right now? Not in history books, not in a simulation, but in the real world. A single nuclear explosion could change everything in seconds. But what happens to you depending on how far away you are? Let's explore the timeline and the distance. Ground zero, 0 kilometers. If you were standing directly beneath the explosion, you wouldn't hear anything. You wouldn't feel anything. The temperature at the center of a nuclear explosion can reach millions of degrees, hotter than the surface of the sun. Everything within the immediate center vaporizes instantly. Buildings disappear, steel melts, concrete turns to dust. At ground zero, survival is impossible, but just a few kilometers away, the story changes. 1 kilometer away. At this distance, the first thing you see is the flash. A blinding light brighter than the sun fills the sky. For a split second, shadows burn into the ground. The heat wave reaches you almost instantly. Skin exposed to the blast can suffer third-degree burns in seconds. Clothing may ignite. Windows explode inward. And then the shockwave arrives. A wall of pressure moving faster than a hurricane. Buildings collapse. Cars are thrown through the streets. Most structures are destroyed. Very few people survive this zone. 3 kilometers away. Here, the explosion still dominates the sky. The mushroom cloud begins to rise. The heat is still intense enough to cause severe burns. But the real danger now is the blast wave. The shockwave shatters glass across entire districts. Flying debris becomes deadly projectiles. Roofs collapse, walls crack, people are thrown to the ground. Emergency services would already be overwhelmed, and the city begins to fall into chaos. 5 kilometers away. At this distance, survival becomes more possible, but danger is everywhere. Windows shatter across miles of streets. Glass fragments fill the air like invisible blades. People near windows could suffer serious injuries instantly. Power lines collapse. Fires begin spreading across neighborhoods. Communication networks start failing. Hospitals quickly become overcrowded. And panic spreads faster than the blast itself. 10 kilometers away. You may not even understand what just happened. First, you see a bright flash on the horizon. Then, seconds later, the shockwave arrives. A deep thunder shakes the ground. Windows shatter. Car alarms echo through the streets. People look toward the sky and see something terrifying. A massive mushroom cloud rising kilometers into the air. At this distance, many people survive the blast. But a new threat appears. Radiation. Hours later, fallout. As the explosion lifts debris high into the atmosphere, radioactive particles begin falling back to Earth. This is called nuclear fallout. Tiny particles of radioactive dust carried by the wind. They settle on buildings, roads, water supplies. Anyone exposed without shelter could receive dangerous radiation doses. Cities downwind from the explosion may become hazardous for days, or even weeks. Days later, infrastructure begins collapsing. Hospitals run out of supplies. Electricity grids fail. Food supply chains stop working. Millions of people may try to evacuate the area. Highways become blocked with vehicles. Emergency responders struggle to control fires, radiation zones, and mass panic. The real disaster is no longer the explosion. It is the collapse of normal life. Months later, large parts of the affected region may remain uninhabitable. Radiation levels slowly decrease, but contaminated zones still pose risks. Entire districts could be abandoned. Nature begins to reclaim destroyed areas, and the landscape of the city may never look the same again. Final question. A single nuclear explosion could reshape an entire city in seconds. But it also raises an important question. If something like this happened today, would humanity be prepared? Or would the consequences be far worse than we imagine? Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to What If Universe